Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. And this week it comes from Matt Bowen from Fulham Focus. Of course, a Fulham fan. That's when Newcastle United travel down to on Saturday to Craven Cottage to hopefully continue their unbeaten run to this Premier League campaign. Matt, thank you very much for popping onto the podcast. Nice to see you. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to talk about Fulham, and I always get worried when your lot come to visit and things because it never seems to go to plan for us. It's great for you guys, but yeah, I guess we're going to get into that, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we can start there if you like, because I didn't realise until I was doing the research for this game, and the BBC always has nicely the stats packaged on their website. So this is where I've got them from. I think they're via Opta. But Fulham are winless in their last 8 Premier League meetings with Newcastle, losing each of the last 5 in a row. So I suspect, Matt, when you hear that stat, that is maybe where some of the fear that you're feeling comes from.
I miss the good old days when you used to come down with Shearer and lose in London all the time, because that was, that was reassuring and nice. But it's not been a great run, and it's. I think the cup game was a strange one for us last year. Last year was back in January, wasn't it? Because it sort of was a slight turning point for us, and your fans were making a hell of a lot of noise, and of course Shearer was stood there in the crowd, which didn't help things either. But the April game as well, which was dire, that you snuck away with a 1-0 win. So I don't know. I think we're going to get on to some of the mitigating factors for this one. The fact that you don't seem to have any fit strikers, and ours are, well, frankly, not Alexander Mitrovic, who we still say nasty things about behind his back now that he's not here. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting chat, I think.
You mentioned there, obviously, we were talking about the cup game that the two teams faced off last season, but in the last few days, Fulham have gone out of the League Cup. Marco Silva making 11 changes to his side that lost in what I think is the record length for a penalty shootout to go on in the League Cup, losing to Preston. What will that do in terms of the mood going into this game? I guess, given the fact that he made 11 changes, probably quite strongly suggests what he felt about the cup. But at the same time, regardless if it's his strongest team or not, winning, breeds that confidence. It brings momentum to a side, and then to lose in that fashion as well. Will it be bringing the kind of the doom and gloom feeling to the dressing room on Saturday?
I don't think so. I think it was one of those early cup rounds where you see almost every Premiership team bring the changes. And for us, it was great to see Ryan Sessegnon get his first match back at Fulham. He played very well. And also see Reece Nelson get his debut. So we seem to have most of the Arsenal old boys up front these days, which is nice for us. Anyways, Arsenal fans seem to not be too happy about it, but hey, who cares? From that point of view, it was good. It looked like a team that hadn't played together. And then that penalty shootout was, at the time, it was quite funny. Because it was going on, because it was that African Cup of Nations game, wasn't it, that they went to ridiculous numbers as well. But I think by the time it ended, it was just nice it was over and we could move on. But it was good to see Anderson get his debut back, played some really nice stuff there in defence. Likely see him play on Saturday, I would think. But I don't think it's going to affect them too much. I think it'll probably affect the guys that were in the squad a bit more for not making more of a statement. But on the whole, it's, we went to the semi-finals, got beat by Liverpool in the League Cup last year, which would have been nice to have another cup run. But I don't think it'll affect them too much. I think there is a lot of focus on trying to get our league campaign going, because it's been a bit stuttering and we've not been at our best so far.
You mentioned Anderson there. I think he's a centre-back that Newcastle United fans would have liked to have seen in the black and white of the Magpies. Quite a big money sign. I know you guys had him on loan before he went to Palace, so he's kind of come home. I think he actually used that in his interview when he did join last month. Do you think that Fulham have signed signed well this summer? I mean, looking at some of the names they've signed, like Smith Rowe, Anderson that we've mentioned. They look like they've done a good bit of business.
I'm personally quite happy with it. I think there's still areas in the defense maybe that, you know, Anderson hopefully will show up. Again, we've sort of been seen to be lacking. There's a big gap after Bernd Leno as well in goal. I thought Bender didn't have a terrible game, but then again, he was clearly not. We're kind of spoiled with Bernd Leno, really. He's, you know, that sort of keeper that you'd love to have because you can kind of rely on him. But you know, last year we lost Mitrovic. We haven't replaced that top line striker. This year we lost João Palhinha, and I think what we're seeing is us adjusting to life without Palhinha, because he got us out of trouble so much. And yeah, we've all played that game when you've got that one really good guy who is always, you know, saving you, making the rest of you look good. That was kind of Palhinha. The problem is we've got a lot of other players who can make that difference. They're just needing to step up. But there's lots of encouraging things. Smith Rowe looks great. Sander Berger, once he gets fit, I think will be an excellent addition in the middle of the park. Have to give a shout out to Sasa Lukic, who has always been a bit of a square peg in a round hole for Fulham since he joined, but he's had a very good start to the season as well. So it would have been nice to have another striker, some money spent there, but we can't complain that money wasn't spent, because you get Emil Smith Rowe in, you get, you know, Sander Berger, you get Anderson. We're football fans. We always want more, don't we? But there we are. I think we'll forget about Tuesday quite quickly, and we'll be looking ahead, because there's enough positives there that we just need this new 11 to gel.
And I mean, obviously, we're only 4 games into the new season. You picked up 5 points from possible 12, 1 win, drawn 2, and 1 defeat, currently 12th in the table. But have you seen enough in those opening games to lead you to a bit of optimism, a bit of positivity ahead of Saturday's game against Newcastle?
Yes, I think our issue again is, you know, the West Ham game, where we got 1-0 up and kind of sat back a bit and then gave one up right at the death. That was, you know, Anderson was playing in that game. It was Jorge Cuenca that was playing on Tuesday night, of course, our young Spanish signing, who looks really, really quite tasty, actually. So we're quite pleased with him for only a couple million. But that was, again, we have a set plan, and if it doesn't quite work, there isn't really a plan B. And you know, I think the West Ham game was telling, in that we had the best of it for a long, long time, and we just couldn't get that second goal to kill it off. And going into a game against you guys, and you've come out of the gates flying, especially after the, you know, how should we put it, indifferent transfer window with some interesting signings to just before, you know, various accounts had to be filed. But you've done what you've needed to do. You've started, you're right up there at the top of the table. Everybody's on top form. Whereas, like I said, with us, we're still trying to get used to that new shape without Palhinha. We've got a bunch of new players coming in. So our questions are really up front. You know, is Muniz the striker who's going to get us? You know, we only really need a striker to get 10, because the rest of the front line tend to chip in as well. Will Raul Jimenez come good like he did last year for that purple patch that kind of started in October and ran through to the end of the year? We have a lot of question marks, but I think we're going to give you a little bit of a test. You know, we've got a new stand with people in it now, which is quite nice. So that's always a bonus, to make a little bit more noise, to try to drown your lot out over there in the corner of the punny end.
Yeah, they'll be lively, because there's a few boats being booked out to go down the Thames beforehand as usual. So if the weather is like it is now, it'll be quite the pre-match celebration. You mentioned there the game against West Ham, and obviously there was the game against Ipswich, and the victory over Leicester wasn't great. But I remember watching the game against Manchester United and thinking, this Manchester United side looked pretty dreadful, but Fulham looked worse. They just couldn't seem to hang on to the ball, and there was that run by Pereira when he just totally fluffed the pass. And if he'd got it right, you know, you would have gone on to get the lead. And is it a case that you look back on games like the Manchester United defeat and the draws to Everton, to West Ham and Ipswich, and you think, oh, what might have been?
I think we're kind of used to that. It's unfortunately that's kind of how Fulham are, and we're games that we should win. Manchester United seem to be our bogey team at the moment. We go up there, snatch something early, and then throw it away. I still have nightmares of that FA Cup game when everybody just melted down, and I think half the team got sent off. That's what we kind of come to expect with this team. We've got a very fiery manager who fires everybody up, and then things can fall apart. I think he even got booked in the West Ham game, didn't he? So we have this bubbling around in the background. The Leicester game wasn't great. We left most of their centre backs unmarked at set pieces, which was a worry. But again, we've got a lot of new players coming in, and the concern about those opening couple games, the Ipswich draw and things, our back line was one that should have known better. And now that we're dropping Anderson in, hopefully that will start to gel. He hit that absolutely gorgeous crossfield pass in the West Ham game. So we're looking for that going forward. I think now that everything's settled, everybody's been there for a few weeks. Nelson arrived at, God only knows what time in the morning on the transfer deadline day. So, it was nice. He didn't even get unveiled for like a week after the deadline. So there's lots of options to go forward. It's just a case of gelling him. We have our complaints as fans. We've got poor old Andreas Pereira, who you love him or you hate him. He divides fans. His stats are, anyone would kill for those stats, but his final product is still missing. And we can quite clearly see why the Man U fans used to call him the preseason Pirlo. But he's a threat, and we have a lot of threat across that front four behind the striker. So there's hope, but like I said, we've just not gelled yet, and hopefully we'll gel on Saturday, and all your lovely boat trips will be a bit quieter heading back up the Thames for your trip up north.
But with it being at Craven Cottage, the record at home for Fulham isn't great of late. Only one win in the last 6 Premier League home games, drawn 2, lost 3. Before that, it was you'd won 4 of your previous 6 at Craven Cottage. So what's gone wrong? Have we got to consider that was maybe the kind of towards the end of last season, you always got that little bit of lull when maybe you're either just secured your safety and there's nothing ahead of you to go for like European football, or is there something more to read into it?
I think last year we got into that sort of dangerous middle part of the table when you're safe from relegation and you're just not far enough up the table to challenge for that last Conference League place. And we suffered some injuries. Immediately the transfer rumors start up again around Palini and things like that. So I think they went off the boil a bit. And this season, again, it's that Palini shaped hole in the 6. And I think we've had Louis Beaumorte, our assistant manager, leave as well. So we've had some coaching changes there. So there's lots of things in flux at Fulham at the moment. And the Cottage is, a wonderful place to watch football and have football played at. When we're playing well, it's the most raucous place, probably after some place up in Newcastle that makes a lot of noise, but we won't talk about that. It's a fabulous ground, and we can make it a fortress. Unfortunately, I think we've been a little bit, as fans, not sure of what's going on. The lack of striker and things. People, we're safe in the Premier League now, which is something we've wanted for the last 10 years. After that relegation and the bouncing back and forth, so I think we're adjusting to it. We've got, like I said, a new team out there as well. It will come good. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and we've got some points on the board. We're not, we've won a game, we've drawn a couple by not playing well. So that's for me personally, I think that's a positive. If we were playing really, really well and we've only gotten this, that would be a concern. The fact that we're still not quite firing and we're 13th in the table or whatever it is, that doesn't fill me 12th. Oh, great. Even better. doesn't fill me with too much dread, because we know we can play better. We know that we've got Emil Smith-Rowe getting fit, and he's already been playing incredibly, chasing down lost balls. The goal against West Ham, that was an overhit Andreas Pereira pass that almost every player in the Premier League would have just let go for a goal kick, but he got it back, and we got something out of nothing. So there's glimpses there, and I think the questions we have around formation with the new players coming in, is Pereira in the 8? Is he playing the 10? Does Smith-Rowe move into the middle, stay on the left? Yeah. Does he? We haven't even mentioned the not having Willian to create stuff as well. So it's a team in transition, but I think we're going to be getting there, and I think we will probably give you a fun game on Saturday, and it'll be interesting to see what team you field with, especially with the question marks about Isak and what I do with my fantasy team, because he's up front for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as well. He's my captain at the moment. On Alexander Isak, potential injury at the time of recording, which is 1:30 on the 19th of September. This will go out the morning after, so it'll go out just before Eddie Howe's press conference, and hopefully by the time Eddie Howe speaks on Friday morning, we'll have some answers on Alexander Isak. But there has been a report in one of the national newspapers on the Thursday afternoon that Alexander Isak is a doubt for the game against Fulham due to a toe injury. And Newcastle fans might remember against Wolves, he dodged past one defender, and he seems to then maybe have an air kick, and he's actually looks like he's maybe kicked the ground, and he was limping a little bit before he did go off with an eye injury. So we will hopefully get some confirmation from Eddie Howe about Alexander Isak. But saying that, we probably won't do, and who knows what the team will look like on Saturday. But it's really interesting that you mentioned the fact that, from your point of view, Fulham haven't been playing very well, but have still picked up points. So you're not filled with dread, because that is exactly the same boat that Newcastle United fans find themselves in. Newcastle United have played pretty poorly in all of their opening 4 games, well below the level we've come to expect of them. And yet they're sitting third. And if they beat Fulham, they could go, or they will go, top of the Premier League for 24 hours, because City and Arsenal play on the Sunday. So it's really interesting that kind of both teams are in that similar position where they've not been playing well, but are still picking up points. And that's the kind of foundation, isn't it, for any manager, that, the remedy to finding how it clicks, is a lot easier to find if you're still picking up points while playing poorly.
Yeah. And that's, I think what we have is a clash of two very good coaches. I think Eddie Howe's done incredible things with your lot. Yeah. We sing Marco Silva is a genius, because he is. He came in super late the season. Scotty Parker pulled up sticks and ran out, got us promoted with record numbers, and has built on that every year. And the fact that we've managed to keep him, I think, is a sign of his faith in what he's building at Fulham. And we've had a very turbulent couple seasons with departures, but it looks like he's kind of got the players that he wants. So I think there's a lot of similarities. I'd much rather be playing pants and be third than 12th. So, there's a little bit of a difference there. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Eddie Howe and Marco set this one up, because they're both going to come into it thinking this is there for the taking. And I think it's going to be quite fun to be there on Saturday to see it, because, like I said, that both teams have something to prove that they can get into gear, especially getting into this funny period in between this and the next international break as well, because I hate these international breaks in this time of year. Nobody can get into a flow. But what happens between now and the lead up to Christmas is vital. And I think for both teams, you've got a better platform. For us, it's that, we are still a team that looks over our shoulder for the first 6 months of the season. But hopefully we can both kick on and have a good game on Saturday.
Well, I was going to ask you what the expectation is this season for Fulham, because I think when Newcastle United play teams like Fulham, with all due respect, I think you can probably put Fulham alongside Bournemouth in the same category. Many people will say if Newcastle want to be getting top four this season, then you have to be beating teams like Fulham and like Bournemouth, even if it's away from home. You can't be dropping points. But I think that's a little bit unfair on both the likes of Fulham and Bournemouth, because, as we've mentioned, Fulham have got some very dangerous players. And if it does click on Saturday, Newcastle United can't afford to be complacent, and they can't afford to underestimate Fulham at all.
No, and I think it's fun for us as fans, because we do feel that when we're playing our best, we can probably beat just about anybody. And we showed that last year with that silly Robin Hood title that we got given by beating most of the top six and then losing to the bottom six. So it's a weird little situation that we're in. But I think for us, at the close of the window, without signing a striker, everybody's aspirations dropped from European places to being 10th. I think that was where we are looking. It's pleasant not to be thinking we're going to be in a relegation scrap. He says, I've kind of jinxed it now, haven't I? But that sort of thing, that we look at the squad, we think this has got enough talent in us for us to be pushing higher than we were last year, but maybe just not as high as we would have liked, because we all have very good memories of our last time in Europe. As he says, looking up at my ticket from the Hamburg final on the wall, and those great glory days of Roy Hodgson's reign. But we're trending in the right direction, to use a buzzword for you. And you never know, if this team gels nice and quickly and we start racking up those points, maybe we can have slightly more aspirational goals than we do at the moment.
In terms of what to expect from Fulham on Saturday, we've seen Newcastle United play kind of two different ways so far this season. We've had the kind of style where they've had very little of the ball, and then they've just hit teams on the counter, and then they've kind of had to really dig in and defend. And then, for example, against Wolves on Saturday, we saw where, especially in the first half, I think they had 70% possession. And I think they're better when they maybe need to absorb and then hit on the counter. I think they're still trying to get used to being that dominating side. So what are we expecting from Fulham in terms of, firstly, kind of, will they have a lot of the ball, or will they give it to Newcastle and say, come on, then let's see what you can do?
Marco tends to play with a high press. So it's usually a 4-3-3 with the ball and a 4-4-2 out. So it's going to see us trying to create options on the wings. Usually that's where the trouble comes from, with the likes of the fullbacks in Jeddah, in Robinson, and it'll be probably Tete starting because of Traore's inability to defend. So you're going to see us looking around those edges. But where things get interesting is the Anderson thing. We now have a very good ball playing centre back who hits those delicious diagonal balls from deep. And again, we talk about that front three with Iwobi, Traore, Emile Smith-Rowe. Lots of pace, lots of talent. And if you especially release Traore with a little bit of space, he's going to cause all kinds of trouble, like he did back in the day at Wolves. So I think, interestingly, from what you said, probably playing into your want to counter attack, because we'll look to break very fast. All the modern stuff, building from the back and passing it around the back line for a bit. Yeah, you'll see that. But they will play quite high up the pitch. So it'll be an interesting battle, considering we're probably playing into each strengths. You'll be letting us come forward a bit, and that's where we'll want to be. But then you'll also be looking to exploit that. So I think that's why I'm saying it's going to be a fun game, because that little interchanges around the edges with Smith-Rowe and Robinson on the left, Traore and Tete and Pereira on the right as well makes it tasty. Again, it's who are we going to play up front, because he's played both our strikers at the moment, and it's going to be interesting. And they're both very, very different. So yeah, Muniz is very much a sort of targety man, holding things up, always looking for the overhead kick goal, which he finally got last year, which made us all very happy. Or Jimenez, who's more of that sort of poacher, appearing in the box. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to probably play into what you want, but also try to exploit that by keeping you penned back. And I think both sides are going to see lots of the ball for long periods of the game, trying to find a gap. But yeah, I can tell you how we're going to set up, because we've set up exactly the same for every game. It'll be a 4-3-3, just who that personnel is, especially in the middle of the park. Does Berger play? Does Anderson come in? Likely. And who do we play at right back? Castagna unfortunately had that terrible penalty miss, which I'm pretty sure has come down now somewhere in Preston. But those right backs are always an interesting question, because they're very different in the way they play. So, but the rest of the team more or less picks itself. So,
I mean, there are a few selection dilemmas for Eddie Howe on Saturday. Obviously, we've talked about Isak, and if he is indeed injured, then it'll be Anthony Gordon up front, because at the moment, William Asula, who they signed from Sheffield United in the summer, isn't ready in the eyes of Eddie Howe. I mean, Anthony Gordon up front just, for me, doesn't work. It becomes so much more less effective. So that definitely works for Fulham. But if Alexander Isak is fit, then he starts without a shadow of doubt. Then it's all about who starts out on the left. Will it be Harvey Barnes, and Anthony Gordon has to go at the right, which again brings him down maybe a level in the eyes of most people. So you can look at that as a positive selection dilemma. Some will look at it negatively, because you've got two brilliant left wingers, but one of them will end up having to play on the right where they're not as good. And then in the middle of the park, does Sandro Tonali come in, who's been brilliant since coming back from his ban, 2 games for Italy where he starred, and he's slowly getting up to speed, but he looks ready now. And that's going to be the big selection dilemma for Eddie Howe on Saturday. I mean, I've mentioned a few players there, Matt. Is there anyone in particular that you fear from a Fulham point of view that you maybe hope doesn't make the trip on Saturday?
Half the team, please. Yeah, I think Isak's going to be the key, because I think if he's fit, the rest of the team kind of slots in. You have that enviable problem of where do you play Barnes and Gordon, and that's the sort of dilemma you want. To me, Gordon on the right doesn't quite work, but then again, it's still Anthony Gordon, so he's gonna be a pain in the ass, whoever's gonna face him. And if he's on the right, he's gonna be certainly giving Robinson pause to think. But I think it's that sort of front selection is going to be vital. But for me, I think when you guys have Isak up front, you just look right. He brings a sort of settledness, and everybody has this confidence that he's there. And the magic that he can produce is, well, the reason why he's in my fantasy team. Let's not beat around the bush. But it's I don't have any of our strikers in my team. Do I actually have any Fulham players in my team? That goes to say many things when you're being subjective about this. But I think that's going to be key. And if it is Gordon up front, I think we'll see you guys sitting back a lot more to try to exploit the pace. Exploit the pace. Say that quickly, dear listener. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what that is and how it works out. But the Tonali thing is going to be interesting. I'm sure there will be some chance from the Hammersmith end about his return, as anyone coming back from a ban like that is bound to get a few words spoken at him from opposition fans. But again, it's an enviable position to be in, to be able to have those sorts of problems to figure out. And I think, as a Newcastle fan, it must be great to have those assets at your disposal. But the same for us as well. We have some nice pieces that are fitting in, but it's just how do we make them fit? And that's the same thing. To be fair, come January, if I'll happily drive Isak down to Motspur Park if he fancies a change and come and live down south.
He's a fantastic player. It's an absolute joy to watch him week in, week out. Against Wolves, Newcastle's left side was very badly exposed. Lewis Hall, who's very young, he's only 20 years of age. He's still learning his trade at left back. Him and Dan Burn, who was playing left side centre back, they were exploited by Wolves, and their goal came from that side. And time again, the pace was an issue. Do you think that's something that Fulham will look to exploit on Saturday?
Oh, Dan Burn's going to score against us again. we cut him and he's gone off and had a fantastic career. So I'm sure Dan Burn will have a fabulous game because he's coming back to the cottage and he always seems to upset everybody when he comes back to the cottage. But I think that's going to be the interesting place because your left side will be up against our right, which will be the likes of Traore and Pereira cutting in. And Traore's got all the pace in the world, and especially if he's been greased up before the game, he's going to be difficult to catch. So I think that'll be there. I remember seeing Hall. I think he made his debut at Fulham, or one of his early games was at Fulham the other season. There's a player there, and I think he's going to come good as well. So Silva will be looking to exploit those things undoubtedly, and I think it's going to be pace trying to get in behind. But like I said, Burn, whenever he comes back to Fulham, he makes us regret many things. And it's great to see that he has gone on to the things he has because he'd gotten a bit lost when he was with us, and he's gotten his head down and built a fantastic career. So well done him. As long as he doesn't score against us again, it'll be all right. Because I think it's the only time he scores, isn't it?
He doesn't score many, but it is great to see his story kind of come full circle, having been released by Newcastle and then end up playing in the Champions League and scoring in the Champions League as well for Newcastle United. I mean, he must still be pinching himself. In terms of Fulham's main weakness that Newcastle can exploit, what would it be?
I think at the moment it's where do we start? Striker. The threat probably won't be coming from whoever we've got in the 9. So there's probably that level of comfort there. But then again, it's the back line. If Anderson plays, Bassey's had a slow start to the season as well. He finished last year really, really well after a wobble coming back from the Cup of Nations. So I think there's new players gelling into the team. And I think if we see Anderson play, if we see say Muniz up front as well, that's going to mean there's a little bit of confidence there that you guys can be able to go after. And I think it's going to be that back line that will be tricky. We've got Bernd Leno, even when he's not firing on all cylinders, he again made some interesting decisions as well. We have a keeper that we can rely on, but whoever plays on the right side of defense, and again, if Pereira's playing deep in the 8, that's not a position he's ideal for. And when he's not playing next to João Palhinha in there, as good as Sasa Lukic or Sander Berger potentially are in that position, nobody's really played like that. So there's going to be gaps to exploit. And from my perspective, I hope we just stay tight in that sort of back middle 4 and keep you guys going to the wings, because I think we'll have more luck hitting you on the break from there.
What's the main strength that Newcastle have to look out for and that Eddie Howe will be trying to shut down as early as possible?
I think it's going to be that those 3 behind the striker. So it's likely to be Smith Rowe and Iwobi and Amanda Traore, because they can create things out of nothing. Like I said, Smith Rowe has got a point to prove. He's come on a pretty decent transfer fee, and you can tell he has a lot of good feeling behind him at the moment, and all his mates are there. Reece Nelson has showed up. Iwobi's there. There's good feeling across that front line, and I think that has been clear to see from what's been coming out of the squad. So it's that interchange of those 3 that usually sit behind the striker when we've got the ball is where it's going to come from. And I'm really excited by having Smith Rowe there, and especially Reece Nelson as well. Again, another player that's coming through, can play on either side. It's exciting. I like, it's what we love about Fulham is that we have many reclamation projects, and with someone like Marco Silva, he can coach the best back into these players, and that's exciting to see. Whether or not it starts to click on Saturday is a question mark I still have.
Well, I hope it doesn't. That leads me on to my final question. What is your score prediction for Saturday? How will it go?
I hate making. If I'm honest, I don't think I've ever gotten a score prediction right. So Sky have nothing to worry about from either Super 6. I have a feeling it'll be 2-1 to Newcastle. I think we're still figuring it out, and you guys not playing well, but having won the games that you have, you've sort of got that there. I think it's going to be tight, and I don't think it's going to be the prettiest of games, because I don't think our games usually are. They don't go early on match of the day, do they? So it's going to be a bit of a scrap, but I have a feeling you're probably going to scrape it. It'll be the usual thing, 1-1 at half time, and then just a weird second half with everybody wanting something more and a scrappy goal. So I have a sneaking suspicion you'll win 2-1. My heart, of course, will always say we'll win it 5-0, and it'll be a glorious day next to the Thames under the sun, and get there early for £1 pints and all that sort of business. So bring it on.
I'd certainly take a 2-1 win. I'd be more confident in saying Newcastle United were going to win if Alexander Isak is playing. If it's Anthony Gordon, I'm not too sure about Newcastle United scoring too many goals. But again, like yourself, I think it's going to be scrappy. I don't think it's going to be one of the first games on Match of the Day. And I just think it'll be a tale of two teams still trying to find their feet this season. And I think Newcastle have just got that little bit extra quality, which means they will hopefully shine through and pick up all 3 points. But I think it'll be a close game. It won't be, as we say, pretty on the eye. But yeah, I'll back Newcastle for all 3 points. And fingers crossed Alexander Isak, from Newcastle's point of view, is there to score the winning goals. And if he does, then both our fantasy football teams will be in good health, yeah?
Yeah. Now you put it like that, I'm not too sure about it. Well, yeah, I think that Isak's the key. I think that's going to make or break it. And it's when I say it's not going to be a pretty game, I think it'll be exciting to watch and to cheer on, because there's going to be opportunities for both sides. So yeah, here's to it, and hopefully it's a nice sunny day by the Thames, and you guys all have a lovely boat trip to our lovely new pier, which I think is open, and we'll crack on and see how it goes.
Yeah, if any Fulham fans have stumbled across this episode, it'll be well worth a watch, seeing the Geordies coming down the Thames. It's always a good laugh, always very lively, very well behaved, but always a jovial atmosphere ahead of the game. Matt, thank you very much for popping on to the podcast. A pleasure to chat to you guys watching and listening. You know what to do. If you're on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and if you're on our audio channel, please leave us a rating and review. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including Eddie Howe's press conference on Friday morning and our dedicated Matchday Live blog on Saturday afternoon. And from myself, I'll see you guys on Monday for the Monday Show.